guys, my name is Tina and welcome back. Thank you for finding me if this is your first time. Welcome to my channel. I like to talk a lot about spirituality. I like to talk about crystals. Today we are going to talk about the negative aspects of a spiritual awakening. So the negative symptoms of a spiritual awakening. I am going to start with my own list, and then I'm going to read what Eckhart Tolle says about the dark night of the soul. That is what we in the spiritual community call the negative aspects of a spiritual awakening. And just to kind of give you a little background information about what a spiritual awakening is. It is when you realize that you are more than just your body, okay? You're from other places. You realize that this probably isn't your first life on earth. Many of us have actually had many lives on earth and other places, star systems. Many believe that there's other planets out there who have life. So that's just left up to interpretation by the individual, and I will not get too far into that. But I have done a video in the past, and you can check out my past videos, where I was talking about the positive aspects of a spiritual awakening. So when we go through a spiritual awakening, at first we are elated. We're so happy. We're like pumped. We're like, oh my gosh, there's more than just this. There's more than just this body. There's more to life, that I've been told. And then so you get super excited, you get pumped up about it. And then something happens eventually, and it's called the dark night of the soul. And sometimes it can cause people to even go into somewhat of a depression because you feel so good and so alive and wow, I have it all figured out. And then you realize, wait a minute, I don't really have it all figured out. And then you get a little bit sad because you start going, well, if I'm X amount of age and I'm just now figuring out that I'm not just this body born by these two parents that I may or may not even like. Some do, some of us do, some of us don't. Some of us like one and not both. I mean, it just depends. But you do start to question literally everything in your life, from the people that you are around, to your parents, to your education. Like, does it even make sense that I have this PhD or this, MD or whatever it is? You question everything. And then you start to realize that, not everything is quite the way it seems. You start realizing that there is something called a veil. And so once you have a spiritual awakening, the veil starts thinning out a little bit and you start seeing things. You might gain gifts that you've never had before, other than your normal senses. Maybe you start developing other senses. And so when that starts happening, that can get a little bit scary. And then you want to tell somebody about your gifts, but then you're scared to because they're going to think you're a wacko. And then you get worried about, oh my gosh, what are people going to think about me? What are they going to say about me? What if I lose somebody because of this? And that is another really scary thing. Another thing that can happen is that we start worrying a lot about society. How do I conform? Am I conforming? Is it appropriate for me to have different beliefs? Is it appropriate for me to have purple hair? You know what? So the good news is the dark night of the soul does not last forever. And it does come in waves. So you'll have an awakening and then you'll have a little bit of a dip of a dark night of the soul where, you start having the depression or the questions and the realizations. And then slowly but surely, You get answers and then you start just not worrying about it as much. But then you start to learn that a lot of programming has happened over your lifetime, whether it is what you were taught in school or what was passed down from generation to generation, to religious beliefs. And that's the most heartbreaking part, I think, for a lot of people, is that they're grieving their religious beliefs, something that they thought was rock solid. If I do this, I'm going here. If I don't do this, I'm going there. And you realize that you've been lied to by so many people. Or maybe it's part truths, but nobody truly knows. Nobody truly knows. And that part can also be a little bit scary. And then you start realizing that, maybe, just maybe, God might be living inside of you, that maybe you can control your own reality. And that can be a little bit daunting as well. Okay, well, I thought somebody else was in control of my life, and now all of a sudden I have all this power and I can make my own reality, and I can actually pick my friends and my family. And what? How did that happen all of a sudden? Because I was relying on everybody else to do this for me. Well, no. Now you're realizing that you have power, and it's a lot of power if you let it. But you're realizing that you create your reality for better or for worse. So if you are in a situation that you don't like, you need to change it, because you can change it. And then that makes people scared. Okay, well, now here we go. Now I have power. How do I use my power? Well, you have to stop being scared, which takes time. It takes some people counseling, coaching, and it just depends on the person. But there's also a lot of just wanting to know everything. And then also at the same time, that's all they want to do, is they want to research. And then they start losing interest in the mundane parts of their lives. They no longer find it fascinating to go out to a bar or to meet up with this same group of friends over and over and over, that all they do is talk about boring things that you're not interested in anymore, because you have some depth to you now. You actually want to talk about, what happens after you die. You want to talk about creating your own reality and manifestation and cool things like that, instead of, what did so-and-so buy today from Neiman Marcus. I mean, that's cool too, to an extent, but you can't take it with you. I'm just saying. Okay, and then all of a sudden, it feels really, really heavy, because you have this desire, and it comes with the spiritual awakening. It just does. You feel like you have freedom, or you want so desperately to have freedom, and you start feeling a bit trapped. And so you're wanting to break free of this feeling, this emotion of feeling trapped. And so then that starts the dark night of the soul, And so you can see where I'm going with this. So you learn, and then you start to feel, okay, I've got this. I know everything about spiritual awakening now. I'm good. I'm enlightened. Boom. No, you're not. Guess what? There's layers to this. There's levels. There's leveling up. There is, I'm telling you, doing my own meditations, there is levels to it. You start doing a 10-minute meditation a day. And then now I can meditate for 2 hours straight, and I can get into my light body. I can astral travel. I can see lights. I can, and it's very, very special that someone is able to do that, but it comes with discipline, practice, and motivation. And so when you have those things, you will be able to get there. I'm going to leave you now with Eckhart Tolle's interpretation of the dark night of the soul. So he says, the dark night of the soul is a term that goes back as long as time. Yes, I have also experienced it. It is a term used to describe what one could call a collapse of a perceiving meaning in life, an interruption into your life of a deep sense of meaninglessness. The inner state in some cases is very close to what is conceivably called depression. Nothing makes sense anymore. There's no purpose to anything. Sometimes it's triggered by some external event, some disaster perhaps on an external level. The death of someone close to you could trigger it, especially premature death. For example, if a child dies, or you had built up your life and given it meaning, and the meaning that you had given your life, your activities, your achievements, where you're going, what is considered important, and the meaning that you had given your life for some reason collapses. It can happen if something happens that you can't explain away anymore, some disaster which seems to invalidate the meaning that your life had before. Really, what has collapsed then is the whole conceptual framework to your life, the meaning that your mind has given it. So that results in a dark place. But people have gone into that, and then there is the possibility that you emerge out of that into a transformed state of consciousness. Life has meaning again, but it's no longer a conceptual meaning that you can necessarily explain. Quite often, it's from there that people awaken out of their conceptual sense of reality, which has collapsed. They awaken into something deeper, which is no longer based on concepts in your mind. A deeper sense of purpose, of connectiveness with a greater life that is not dependent on explanations or anything that is conceptual any longer. It's kind of a rebirth. The dark night of the soul is a kind of death that you die. What dies is the egoic sense of self. Of course, death is always painful, but nothing real has actually died there. Only an illusionary identity. Now, it is probably the case that some people who've gone through this transformation realize that they have had to go through that in order to bring about a spiritual awakening. Often it is part of the awakening process, the death of the old self and the birth of the true self. The first lesson in A Course of Miracles says, nothing I see in the room means anything. And you're supposed to look around the room at whatever you happen to be looking at, and you say, this doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything. What is the purpose of a lesson like that? It's a little bit like recreating what can happen during the dark night of a soul. It's the collapse of a mind-made meaning, conceptual meaning of life. Believing that you understand what it's all about. With A Course in Miracles, it's a voluntary relinquishment of the human mind-made meaning that is projected, and you go voluntarily into saying, I don't know what this means. This doesn't mean anything. You wipe the board clean, and the dark night of the soul, it collapses. You are meant to arrive at a place of conceptual meaninglessness, or one could say a state of ignorance, where things lose the meaning that you had given them, which was all conditioned and cultural and so on. Then you can look upon the world with imposing a mind-made framework of meaning. It looks, of course, as if you no longer understand anything. That's why it is so scary when it happens to you. Instead of you actually consciously embracing it, it can bring about the dark night of the soul. To go around the universe without any longer interpreting it compulsively as an innocent presence. You look upon events, people, and so on with a deep sense of aliveness. You sense the aliveness through your own senses of aliveness, but you are not trying to fit your experience into a conceptual frame time or framework anymore. So that's the exciting part. It's exciting and scary at the same time. Like I said, it's like You have a whole new purpose, and the purpose is forgetting everything you've ever learned from childhood until you have your first awakening. And I said first because you will have one of many. It's not going to just be like this big, I'm awakened now and I'm free. No, like I said, there are levels of losing the ego and really building up to being enlightened. I am far, far from it. I am here to tell you I am far from it. But that's okay. I'm in no hurry. And that's also an important thing. A lot of people want to be in a hurry to be this beautifully awakened person like Eckhart Tolle. Everybody would love to be Eckhart Tolle, but we're not. He is, and he gets that title. He gets that name. But someday, maybe, oops, as I knock over my bottle of water, see? So anyways, guys, I hope this video was helpful. And if you have any questions, please leave me a comment. I answer every single comment. And hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more videos about spiritual awakening, about crystals, about anything metaphysical. I'm all about it every time. So you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you all very, very soon. Bye.